the Roman majuscule, which is pretty much unchanged. It's the capital letters. You can go to the Metropolitan Museum of Art or any other place with a significant Roman collection. And if you can read Latin, you can read what's the inscriptions on all of the things. And then we have this Merovingian minuscule, which roughly speaks corresponds to our lowercase letters. And those aren't too bad. So here's a T, here's an E, here's an I, here's an R, and they're recognizable. Where things get complicated is that when you put these letters next to each other, there's this really complicated system of ligatures that join the two letters. So you can think about this as variations on cursive writing. So if I put an E and an R next to each other, I end up with something that looks like that. If I put an E and a T next to each other, I end up with something that looks like that. And that, you can actually see where that goes. There's our ampersand. There's our ampersand. Here's a T and an E, which kind of looks like a bow tie, and so on. So again, going back to that earlier comment, how trying to read this Merovingian minuscule is sort of a form of torture. Well, here's your basic letters, but then you have to identify all of these other forms. That's going to make reading Merovingian script very, very difficult. Well, fortunately, you don't have to deal with that too long. This is one of the important revolutions in the history of typography. Charlemagne, around 800 AD, employs Alcuin of York to do several things, among other things, to reform the educational system of what would become the Holy Roman Empire. And one of Alcuin's biggest changes here is a reform of the Merovingian script, getting rid of all these painful ligatures and forming something that is a little bit easier to read and write. And again, throughout the medieval period, this becomes fairly common, but then you get to the Renaissance, and there's this concern that, well, the way that we're writing is a degeneration of the proper way to write that was determined by the Romans. So this becomes particularly important when you start to invent the printing press. Now, brief history of the printing press. This originates in China, possibly Korea. Probably the first important use of it is it's used to print money and playing cards. That's probably a connection there. But then again, traditional history gets to Europe. Gutenberg invents the movable type, and then as soon as you have the movable type, if you're just writing letters, there's going to be some variation in how you write the letters. It's a natural variation because different people are going to write letters differently. The question is, if I'm going to use movable type, I'm going to need a lot of letters that look identical, because otherwise the printed book doesn't look so good. And so the question is, what should these letters look like? And here's a challenge, which is, so here's a Fibonacci spiral. How do you make a letter A that is going to incorporate the golden ratio? Can you make a possible letter A that incorporates the golden ratio? Well, Pacioli, who introduces the golden ratio, doesn't even try to do so. Again, brief history.